I mean, honestly, what more is there really to say about Buffalo at this point? Their quarterback is the reigning MVP. They have a great offensive line, a great run game, a diverse group of pass catchers, a defense that tends to play better than the sum of its parts, and, one of the best home field advantages in the entire sport. This team is ready to go. They are ready to win a Super Bowl. There's just one problem. Their mirror image is standing in the way. And when I say mirror image, I mean it. Buffalo and Kansas City are incredibly similar to one another. They are built the exact same way to win the exact same way. So to get you ready for the inevitable confrontation, today's show is just as much about the macro of what makes an elite team elite as it is about the micro. So with that, Jay, Autumn, Anthony, roll the intro.
Buffalo Bills football is inevitable. Every fall in Western New York, the entire mental health of the region will rise and fall with the exploits of this team. And for the past 6 years, the results have been incredibly good. Every one of those seasons is a 10-win season, 6 playoff appearances, 2 conference championship games. Heck, since we introduced Bootleg Power Score 3 years ago, this team has ranked 1st, 6th, and 5th. But as Buffalo Bills fans know, every one of those seasons also contained a disappointment, the inability to reach the Super Bowl. So this team will be very good this year again. This team will probably be a high seed in the playoffs again. And then this team will face its demons again and see if they've done enough to earn another shot to play for a Super Bowl title.
So this is going to be a very different episode, I think, than the rest of this series. And you kind of opened the door a little bit here because you brought up the mental health of the region. I was watching the first Bills Hard Knocks episode last night, I guess you could say in preparation for recording this. And the thing that struck me the most was how ingrained the community is with this team. And not to say that there aren't other extremely passionate fan bases in the NFL. Like we see it in Green Bay. We obviously see it in Chicago, even though there's a little bit more nervousness in Chicago. But there's something about Buffalo and the way that fan base throws themselves in wholeheartedly every single year with this team. And, they embrace the fact that most of the time, it's not going to end the way they want it to. Nobody wins the Super Bowl every year, not even Kansas City. Most of the time, it's going to end in heartbreak. But the way that they embrace that and the way that they come back 6-7 months after the most devastating day of their year that they can damn near set their watch to at this point. But they still show up every single August. They're still just as excited. They're still just as in love with the Buffalo Bills. And they are not jaded. They're not disillusioned. They went through the drought and they remember what that's like. And so they're still thankful for every single day that they have hope that can be broken, right? It's such a unique connection between fans and team, and it's such a unique community. And I think a lot of what we're going to talk about today it's not just about the football. It's about the mentality of where the team and where the organization is, as well as where the fan base is. Because those things are just as interesting to me as how much cover 2 they run.
The Bills are the only game in town in Buffalo. And there are many other small markets in the NFL, but they all sort of have something else to draw attention away from the NFL team. The NFL team in Buffalo is it. It's the Bills. And they love the Bisons, their minor league baseball team. They love the Sabres. Well, they don't love the Sabres right now. It's been a while. But even when the Sabres are really good, it is a Bills town. Make no mistake. If there is a Bills event, if there is a Bills game, if there is Bills news, it is top above the fold every single time. It is a Bills-dominated town, and I've said many times, it is the only place I know of where after a Bills loss on Sunday, anywhere you go in that town, you know how the game came out, whether or not you watched it. You can go to the bank, and the bank teller's like, "Can I help you?" And look, people are really nice in Buffalo, but you know that they're pissed that the Bills lost yesterday.
I also want to note something else here, because when we get into the scheme section later on in this episode, it's going to sound kind of scary similar to the Chiefs episode that we did all the way back in the first week of this series. And that's on purpose, because the Bills, if you're looking at the macro numbers, are startlingly similar to the Chiefs in almost every single way. The micro numbers might vary a little bit, right? If we're looking at, they run a certain amount of man blocking schemes versus zone blocking schemes, or, they run this much cover 2 versus the Chiefs, run this much quarters. Like, yeah, the micro numbers are going to be different, and that's why we have these companion infographics so you can see those numbers for yourself. But as far as the macro numbers, like how these two teams operate and when they inevitably meet in January, how they operate against each other, they're basically mirror images of each other, and they have built themselves that way on purpose because of the quarterbacks that they have, right? You have two of the already inarguably 10 best quarterbacks to ever exist. Like, Mahomes is minimum top 3. Most would say top 2. And Josh Allen, I think, is already one of the 10 best that I've ever seen. He's fighting for his positioning among guys like Dan Marino and John Elway already in his career, in my opinion. And when you have that kind of quarterback, especially when you're Buffalo and you face another quarterback of that caliber every single year in the playoffs, you ascend past the micro nuances. You ascend past scheme. You ascend past philosophy. And it's really more so about execution, right? It doesn't matter what we call, because we have a quarterback that can execute whatever the call is. And he's going to execute whatever we run to its maximum possible effect, right? So if we're a screen-heavy team, if we're an RPO-heavy team, if we run 4 verts every play, whatever it is our philosophy is, our quarterback is going to squeeze as much out of it as we can. And so these two teams, Buffalo and Kansas City, it's not about the micro. It's really more so about the macro. And so we're going to spend probably more time talking about that than any other team this series, other than Kansas City.
With that said, let's talk about 2024. It was another special year for the Bills. 13-4, first in the division again. 8-0 at home, 5-4 on the road, 3-2 over the last 5. I was just doing another agenda for a team this week, and they were 2-7 at home, and I thought, man, if you're a season ticket holder and you get 2 wins out of your season tickets, it's a very different experience than being a season ticket holder in Buffalo. Is like, I show up and they win. Just seems to be the way this goes. So good job holding down the home turf. And when you get to the effectiveness summary, the power score, I already alluded to it. They were 5th this year. How did they get there? Passing offense, 2nd in the league. Under Joe Brady, Josh Allen has taken a real turn in his quarterbacking and is as good as he has ever been in that part of the game. Rushing offense, 4th. It has also taken a very distinct turn since Joe Brady took over. Pass defense, 21st. This is a little surprising. I was really focused on how good Christian Benford was last year, and we'll talk about that, but everything else around him was kind of meh, and that is not a great rating. They're going to have to bring that up if they want to compete later into the postseason this year. Rush defense was 5th. Points scored, 2nd. Points allowed, 12th. So despite their struggles against the pass, they were almost a top 10 scoring defense. When you take all those numbers, add them up and divide by 6, you get their power score. Again, the 5th most overall powerful team in the NFL.
So I want to start with the offensive side of the ball here, because that's where a lot of the macro stats I refer to live, is on the offensive side of the ball, especially when comparing them to Kansas City. And I think when I look at Buffalo and what they wanted to be philosophically, it was very much a ball control offense. And no longer are they just whipping it all over the yard. They don't throw it down the field at the same kind of rate that they used to back, when in like the early Diggs days, when Josh really started to ascend, and, the production was completely outrageous, and it was Diggs and it was Gabe and, young Dawson Knox. They don't really do that anymore. It's very much a run-first offense. I mean, literally run first. On first down, they have the 6th highest run rate on first down. got 4.7 a clip on first down, so they're always setting themselves up in second and medium. If you're looking at RPO rate and screen rate, fifth highest in RPOs, eighth highest in screens. It's very much just about, all right, let's manufacture easy completions. We'll stretch the field if we get a favorable one-on-one, but it's really not about that. It's more so about retaining possession and just grinding you down, either through the run game or through getting the ball to all of our physical guys in space who could just bruise and batter you over the course of the game. And that mirrors a lot of what Kansas City has leaned into since the Tyreek Hill trade, right? Where they were super heavy in screen rate, heavy in RPO rate, not so heavy in run rate. They augmented a lot of their running game with screens and everything like that. But as far as that ball control identity, if you're looking at possessions per game and plays per possession, these two teams are peas in a pod, right? Buffalo was fifth lowest in drives per game at 10.2. Chiefs were even lower at 9.9. And if you're looking at plays per drive, as in how long each drive is, Bills had the sixth most plays per drive at 6.3. Chiefs were first at 6.8. So these are two teams that no longer are super explosive, but that's more by design, right? It's more so about shrinking the game, lowering the total number of plays in the game, and they really try to hammer you with efficiency. Because as I mentioned before, they are beyond concept. They are beyond play call. It's more so we have a guy that can execute at a higher rate than you can, no matter what the call is. And so by shrinking the number of plays in a game, they are daring you to execute at their level. And that is how they win with macro stats, because they know that you can't keep up with Josh throw for throw if the surface area of throws is lowered to like 25 for each team, right? And they know that you're probably not going to keep up with their run game either, because their offensive line is better than you, and they got a really good running back in the backfield who they may or may not pay by the time this episode goes live. So, these teams that are so good that they're beyond schematic nuance, and it's really more so about we're better than you no matter what. We just have to make you keep up with us. They're the ones that typically end up, in the division round, in the championship round, and eventually in the Super Bowl for Buffalo. I assume at some point they're going to get to the Super Bowl. And that's really the fascinating part to me is how these two quarterbacks basically experienced ego death, right? And it's not about the numbers anymore. It's not about their personal accolades anymore. Like, yeah, Josh won MVP, but I don't even really think he cared. Hell, he just did an interview talking about, Scotty Scheffler's words and how that resonated with him, because he really didn't care that he won MVP. Like, it's not about the numbers. It's not about the production. It's just about, are we winning? And this team won a lot the moment they stopped trying to put up the flashiest stats. Just like Kansas City. They were at their best the moment they stopped trying to win the box score, and they were just trying to win the fucking game. That's why these two teams are the best. And that's why these two teams are going to keep meeting each other in January every year, because they know how to win.
Feels like with both of these teams, when I watch them, they're not really playing against the other team. Of course they are, but they're playing against themselves. And if they play well enough against themselves, if they execute at the level they know they're capable of, they know nobody can keep with them. So it isn't about what's going on around them in their division or even on the other side of the field necessarily. Of course, the coaches are game planning against the opposition, but really it's about if we do what we know we can do, we'll win the game. And that's the same for Kansas City and Buffalo. And they play very much the same style. And when we're analyzing their performance, we say the same thing, like, well, a lot of teams wouldn't be super good right now, but they're still winning football games. How is that? And it's because they are executing against the standard that they've set for themselves. And it's higher than everybody else in the league right now. Good enough is not good enough for these teams. They have to be as good as they've been, which is a very high level for both of them, and even better. And that's what they're striving for every time they hit the field. And as a result, they're stacking up W's.
I also want to have a brief little conversation about EPA per play and how this team is a very interesting relationship with EPA, right? Because it's a stat that overall is weighted very heavily by not taking negative plays. Because it's all about, are you consistently putting yourselves into favorable downs and distances? Because every single play, if you're in a 2nd and 5 from your own 35-yard line, you have so many expected points added on a successful play from that situation, compared to, say, a 3rd and 9 conversion from your own 10-yard line. That's going to be weighted very heavily because you're taking a situation that you're not expected to score, and all of a sudden you're giving yourself a fresh set of downs, which can then lead to another fresh set of downs, and all of a sudden, like you turn a situation where you're not expected to score into a situation where you are expected to score. And Josh Allen in the past has been nails at getting this offense out of trouble in their own territory, and that's why this team has always rated very high in EPA per play, because they score when they're not supposed to, I guess is the best way to put it. But at the same time, you get huge hits to your EPA if you're taking sacks, or if you're taking tackles for loss, or turning the ball over, because obviously you're not expected to score if you're putting yourself into 3rd and 15 from taking a 9-yard sack on 2nd down. And so that is ultimately why this offense, even though it's not super flashy, like they were 14th in explosive pass rate, they were also 14th in explosive run rate, they ran the ball a lot on early downs, that is ultimately why they were still top 4 in EPA per play in rushing and passing at the same time, is because they never went backwards. Like, they had the lowest sack percentage allowed in the entire NFL, just 2.5%. Chicago was 4 times that. They were the worst in the NFL in terms of sack percentage allowed. Now, a lot of that was on Caleb, of course, but it also shows you one of the key differences between a young guy like Caleb, who's still trying to figure it out, versus a guy like Josh, who already went through the process of figuring it out and realizing that it's not about how many explosive passes he hits. It's more so, can you just not put your offense in a position to punt by taking a bad sack on 2nd and down? Like, the less sacks you take, the easier it is for everybody. It doesn't even matter what the individual numbers are. So, you can have a team that's not overly explosive. They're like average explosiveness, but you're really good on 3rd down, just like Kansas City was, right? They were 8th in terms of average time of possession. They were 8th in terms of successful play percentage. They were 3rd in terms of scoring drive percentage. Even though they didn't have that many possessions, they were extremely efficient at scoring on them. They were forcing you to keep up with them. They were incredible in the red zone, like 2nd best red zone TD percentage in the entire NFL, behind only Baltimore. They were at 69.6%. So again, it's just about efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. We will bludgeon you to death and dare you to keep up. And I don't know, there's like 4 teams in the NFL, let alone the AFC. There's 4 teams in the NFL that I think could keep up with that.
You summarize the approach with never go broke making a profit. And what they have done is reduce the opportunities for losses, if you're thinking of that particular model, right? We're just not going to take big negative plays. And every time we come out, even if it's a fewer number of times overall than our opponent, we're going to make the most of it. And when you talked about a young quarterback like Caleb, it's the thing that offensive coordinators have tried to drive into young quarterbacks forever, which is just take the check down, right? You don't have to be the hero. You don't have to run around for 5 seconds and whip it down the field. And Josh was like that when he was a young player as well. And like you said, he matured and he's realized, look, the front office has surrounded me with people that can make plays here. They've built an offensive line in front of me that's one of the very best in the game. If I just utilize that and make sure that I'm not the reason, if I'm not what we used to call Sugar High Josh, this team will make a profit. And he has internalized that sort of ethos to an extent that very few players in the NFL have. And the results speak for themselves. They win a lot of games in Buffalo because of it.
Yeah, I think you can see his maturity over the years in the decreasing the amount of moments where it's like, Josh, what are you doing? A few years ago, we'd get like 1 or 2 a game. 2 years ago, maybe won a game. Last year, almost never happened. Like, didn't take bad sacks, didn't throw bad picks. Like, it was just gone. So, Haley, if you ever happen to watch this, whatever you did, thank you. Because, like, you calmed that man down. And now we just get the best version of Josh every single week. By the way, a lot of like the individual micro numbers that I'm sure some of you do wish that we were talking about here, those still exist. We do have a lot of those in our companion infographic, right? So if you want to look at our run concept rates, and I'll throw that page up on screen right now. We broke it down into under center versus shotgun versus overall run concept rates. We have alignment data, we have motion data. So if you want to look at how often they were under center, how often they use motion versus motion at the snap, if you want to see the trench efficiency data, we still have all of that over in our companion infographic. It's just I wanted to focus on the macro stuff when talking about this team. So again, that's over on our Patreon. Link in the description below. QR code on the screen. Either way, that'll take you there. When we talk about the defensive side of the ball, though, I do want to bring up a couple of these micro stats because I think the defensive side is the thing that I'm a little bit more concerned about than the off. Not even a little bit. I am just flat out concerned about the defensive side compared to the offensive side. But, when kind of zooming in on these micro stats, you can see how concerned the coaching staff was with their safety situation last year, right? Like, this used to be a team that was majoring in quarters at all times. And they could do that because when you had Poyer and Hyde in their primes, like, you could trust them to carry guys vertically by themselves, because in quarters, typically you're going to be responsible as a safety for whoever the number 2 is. If they're going vertical, you're going vertical. You don't have any post help. It's just you in the grass, and that one guy better be able to stop it, right? And you could tell they really did not trust their safeties by having their quarters rate dip down to 18th, which by Buffalo standards is extremely low. They more leaned into cover 2, and they more leaned into quarter, half, and half, quarter. In particular, they were 6th in their cover 2 rate, and they were 5th in playing both quarter, half, and half, quarter. And what that basically did was say, DeMar, you're going to play a deep half. Like, we are not going to leave you exposed to cover on an island. You're not going to be the guy that has to come downhill and play the run. Like, you're going to your spot in the deep half, and we're leaving you there, right? And that's just not, when the Bills are at their best, that's not what they're doing, right? They're not just playing cover 2. They're not just leaving their safeties as an umbrella over the top where they're basically saying, just don't get in the way. Like, this team lived by playing quarters and by showing too high pre-snap and rolling down into cover 3 and letting these safeties come down and get close to the ball and play the run and get interceptions and do all the stuff that Micah and Poyer used to do. Like, being 25th in cover 3 and 18th in quarters, like, that's not the Bills. So you could tell that they didn't like their safety situation just based on that. And I also think that, DT continued to be an issue for this team. And I've been a broken record about defensive tackle being an issue for the Bills for years and years and years at this point. The dam finally broke last year, right? And they didn't do a whole lot to address it this offseason. They drafted Bull Rush McIntyre, for all my Stock Exchange listeners out there, TJ Sanders. But other than that, like, they didn't really invest in the position, and it's still a problem. Like, it's not, like, overall, it's not better. It might be worse now because Daquan Jones is another year older, and unfortunately, he kind of fell off last year, and Ed Oliver is still just Ed Oliver. So it's like, is TJ Sanders going to come in and fix their DT issue that they've had for like 4 years now? I don't think so. Like, I think he's a good player, but he can't do it all by himself. So I don't think safety is fixed yet. I definitely know DT isn't fixed yet. And now we're another year of relying on, the corners to carry the weight of the world and the linebackers to carry the weight of the world, and for Greg Rousseau to play out of his mind and just kind of hope Joey Bosa stays healthy. And like, maybe they can put it all together again. But like, compared to the offense, the defense is on a knife's edge here, and I am deeply worried about it.
There's a lot of pressure on Cole Bishop at the safety position. They drafted him a couple of years ago. He can play that deep half. He did in college. He was also very good around the line. he has versatility, but that's a lot to put on a young player. Again, he's not a rookie, which is a help. He's already been through an entire NFL season, seen the speed, seen the variations, seen the depth of the playbook, and they're going to push him to the forefront and see how much he can handle there because he is a better coverage player than Damar Hamlin. In terms of the defensive tackle, I feel like Brandon Beane has taken the shotgun approach to deal with this. I think he too knows that, speaking of a knife's edge, especially if Oliver Daquan Jones got hurt, there wasn't anything there. So they drafted TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. They brought in Larry Ogunjobi as a free agent, and they took a flyer on Deone Walker, who we'll talk about when we get to the draft, who, if he is healthy, can be a contributor. And that gives you 5 players that you can rotate, which is necessary at defensive tackle. Nobody holds up for 900 snaps anymore, especially not at those sort of high wear positions, which interior defensive line absolutely is. You're just bashing on every single play. You can't do that for damn near 1,000 snaps. You'd be really lucky to get 500-600 good ones. And in order to do that and spread that load across 4 or 5 players, you need good options. So they've still got Dwayne Carter, who they brought in last year, and hopefully out of those 6, they can find their best 5, get a solid rotation at the interior DT, and, they're still going to need Bosa to play well on the outside. They're still going to need Rousseau to play out of his mind, but maybe that would shore up the dam at defensive tackle. I feel better about that. If Cole Bishop doesn't work at safety, you're right back to Hamlin, maybe Jordan Hancock. Like, the options aren't as many or as good, in my opinion. So safety, I'm more worried about. Defensive tackle, it's wait and see because it's the Bills. And again, we've said this every single year, defensive tackle's a problem. Looks like Brandon Beane, took a more varied approach at defensive tackle. At safety, there's a lot riding on Cole Bishop.
Now, I know there's some Bills fans out there that are like, wait, but you said that they had the 5th ranked rushing defense in EPA per play. How is that possible? Again, EPA per play is heavily influenced by tackles for loss. Like, does the offense take a loss? And this Bills run defense against the run just by itself had 101 TFLs. That is insane. And only 16 of those were from blitzes. So they natively just had a shit ton of tackles for loss. So you're thinking, okay, well then clearly the DTs did their job. Like Ed Oliver, who only, by the way, had 14 solo tackles the entire year, played the entire season, only 14 solo tackles. So he and Daquan must have wrecked shop. Nope. Like not almost none, but a very low percentage of those TFLs actually came from them. If you're looking at those 101 tackles for loss, 23 of them were from Rousseau and Epinesa. The edges kicked ass against the run, which they tend to do here. 20 of them were from Bernard and Dorian. Okay, linebackers kicking ass as usual. It's a very Bills thing. We're used to that. 14 of them were just from Rasul and Benford. Their corners tackle well in space. That matched, by the way, those 14 from their starting corner duo, that matched the combined TFL total for their entire interior defensive line room the entire year. That's 10 guys that got snaps at IDL, and their corners got just as many TFLs. So it's still a problem. Like, yes, the rest of this run defense played out of their minds and were able to make it work, but can you imagine how good they would be if they had anybody on the inside who could be a disruptor and a playmaker for them? Because Ed Oliver's been okay, but he's never turned into what they drafted him to be. And Daquan a couple years ago was the glue that held it all together, but he's another year older and he didn't play as well last year, coming off that pectoral injury. Again, I don't know, man. Like, if there's one thing that I think could turn into their Achilles heel, it's that.
They've got to find some diamonds in the pile of defensive tackles that we mentioned, and I think they can. They've got a couple of 3 young players there that they can really lean on and see what they've got. Some of them have to step up, and look, Sean McDermott is known as a defensive head coach, more as a defensive backs coach for sure, but this has been a consistent problem in Buffalo for a while, not only in terms of who they've drafted, who those players have not ascended, but also who they brought in free agency. They've paid some big dollar deals to guys that have moved on at this point because they weren't all that effective either. So I'm hoping this is the year. Do I believe it's the year that DT will turn around for the Bills? I'm not betting my mortgage on that.
So why don't we get to the power structure here, right? Because it's a group that's been together for a long time, and there has been some turnover over the years, particularly at OC. You know, Joe Brady took the job, is it 2.5 years ago at this
Correct.
point? And he seems like he's having a ball. I don't think he wants to go anywhere right now. You got Bobby Babich. Like it's a group that knows each other very well and has worked together for a long time. And that continuity also is a superpower that they share with KC, because that group's been together a long time too.
Yeah. Brandon Beane as the GM has kept this pipeline stocked. There are a couple positions that he struggles with, but not very many. Overall, he has been good, not only in the draft, he's been solid in free agency, and he's been really good at re-signing his own players early enough that he didn't have to give up a king's ransom to do so. And that has kept the core of this team together. And make no mistake, as long as you've got Josh Allen at quarterback, you have a shot every year, and they made sure that's going to be many years from now until I really can't see Josh ever leaving Buffalo, but we'll go from there. Sean McDermott, again, has presided over one of the most prolonged periods of success in Buffalo football. There isn't any other way to say that. It's him and Marv Levy. And that is rare air. By the way, happy 100th birthday to Marv Levy. Just celebrated that at the Hall of Fame game.
100.
Yes.
How about it?
And he was there walking around with the help of Walker. But, may we be so lucky. So offensive coordinator Joe Brady, who we've talked about, really did change this offense, and for the better when he came in and took over from Ken Dorsey. And a lot of it was reemphasizing the run. This isn't anything Bills fans don't know, but has continued to adapt and evolve. And that is a huge challenge in the NFL, even for coordinators. We saw it with your team, the Texans, Bobby Slowick. 1 year, incredibly adaptable, top of the game, talking about getting head coaching opportunities. Next year, fell off because everybody adjusted, and he didn't. Joe Brady has kept this offense on the cutting edge, and that's a huge achievement. DC is Bobby Babich, whose dad, Bob Babich, was the linebackers coach way back when Urlacher and Lance Briggs were in Chicago, so comes from a football family and has kept this linebacking core upholding the family standard, let's put it that way. Special teams coach is Chris Tabor. On offense, notable coaches, we got to start with Aaron Kromer, because he deserves all of the plaudits here for creating one of the best lines, offensive lines, in the NFL, bar none. And I know they don't get credit for that. They're starting to. People are starting to include this group among the top 3, among the top 5. They should be there. They have evolved the same way the offense has evolved over the past 3 years with Joe Brady's help, and they are absolute ass kickers. You said it at the top. They don't allow sacks and pressures of Josh the way they did 4, 5, 6 years ago. It's not the case anymore. This is a Loctite unit, and again, outstanding from injury. I expect them to be that way again, and a lot of that comes from Aaron Kromer. Ronald Curry is the quarterback's coach, again, working with Josh. I bring up Ronald Curry every year because I loved his career as a football player, as a quarterback at North Carolina. He's a fun story. Don't think he probably gets a lot of credit because everybody just goes, oh, Josh Allen's all world. He's otherworldly. Ronald Curry gets at least some of that credit. And Kelly Skipper is another coach I think deserves some spotlight here as the running backs coach. 9th season as the Bills running back coach. And when you look at James Cook and his ascendancy, yes, it comes from Joe Brady in the scheme, but it also comes from guys like Kelly Skipper. James Cook is greater than the sum of what he was coming out in the draft. He was a talented prospect, but he has developed to be a complete threat as a running back. And you got to give Kelly Skipper a nod there. On defense and special teams, Ryan Nielsen is the senior defensive assistant, that ubiquitous title we like to talk about in all these episodes. He was the DC of the Jaguars last season. He has 20 years of coaching experience, 8 of those in the NFL. And what came as a surprise to me, if you've ever seen a picture of Ryan Nielsen, is he started 30 games as a DT at USC.
I mean, if anybody can fix their DT situation, it's going to be Nielsen, because he has a history of being a very, very, very good D-line coach. So I have to imagine that was his first task when he got there, was take what we got and make it good again, because it hasn't been ideal.
One of the reasons for hope, again, or renewed hope for the defensive tackle rotation in Buffalo this season. Jamil Adai is the CB's coach, so cornerbacks coach. He was named the Bills cornerback coach in 2024. He spent 17 years in the college ranks before that, so paid his dues, helped Christian Benford have one of the best Bills cornerback seasons ever, got 11 All-Pro votes between first team and second team. And Jamil's younger brother Jaleel played for the Texans, the Chargers, and the Colts as a safety. Marcus West is the defensive line coach, so this is who Ryan Nielsen's going to lean on to get those guys in shape. He's a very good young coach in charge of a DL that now pairs Russo and Bosa and Epinesa and all the guys we mentioned in the D-tackle rotation. He's got a lot on his plate, but he's got a fair amount of experience too because he played in 3 leagues as a player himself, the NFL Europe, and the CFL. So he too has been around both as a player and a coach. But a big job in front of him, and sort of righting historical wrongs is always difficult as a coach, but it's on Marcus West's plate.
So why don't we take a look at a lot of the moves that Brandon Beane has made this offseason to try to manage this active reload period that the Bills have continuously found themselves in for the last few years. You know, you have a quarterback who is now technically on his 3rd contract because he just got a big raise this offseason. But they've been dealing with, you know, phasing in a new generation of Bills over the last couple years. And I don't want to say jettisoning, but moving on from the original core that was there, you know, in the late 2019s, early 2020s. You know, they moved on from, I think it was like 7 captains last offseason, and they're trying to bring along this next generation. So, you know, while also balancing, hey, our quarterback makes a lot of money, and, you know, we have a DT that makes money, and we have offensive linemen that make money. They're trying to balance all of that spending with bringing along young players. So let's just look at some of the moves that Beane has done to try to keep that balance. Again, these are only the notable transactions. If you want the entire transaction list, as usual, that's going to be over on our companion infographic on the Patreon. But notable losses here. Amari Cooper, no longer in Buffalo. Rasul Douglas, no longer in Buffalo. But I wouldn't 100% be shocked if they bring him back again. They've already started to take on some injuries at corner, in this offseason just since camp has started. So maybe we'll see them bring him back. Von Miller is now a Commander. Von, by the way, played really well for them last year. So, I thought there was a shot that he would have been in Buffalo again this year, considering how efficient he was. But they decided that this year's veteran edge was going to be Joey Bosa instead. Kaiir Elam is also now a Cowboy, and Mac Hollins is a Patriot. As far as retentions, as mentioned, Josh Allen got extended again at $55 million in AAV, but don't let the sticker shock fool you. The contract is actually very manageable. Hell, I would say it's even more manageable now than it was in his first extension, which was not exactly team friendly. This one, I think, is they got space to maneuver. They'll be fine. Matt Milano also brought back at $6.3 million. Greg Rousseau got another extension at $20 million, which, considering the production of Greg Rousseau and the efficiency of Greg Rousseau, like, he was easily, not easily, but he was their most efficient pass rusher last year, as well as a very good run defender. I mentioned the tackle for loss numbers. Like, he's a very good player. And for him to be at 50% of the top of the edge market at 25 years old, that's a hell of a deal by Brandon Beane. Ty Johnson is also back at $2.5 million. Terrell Bernard got extended at $10.5 million, which also about half of the top of the linebacker market. Khalil Shakir, also, again, another very undervalued extension, $13.2 million. Top of the receiver market, also $40 million. I'm sorry, I love Jamar Chase. Khalil Shakir is not a quarter of Jamar Chase. Like, that's a massive, massive steal. And then Christian Benford, also $17.2 million. Top of the corner market is now $30+ million. How, like, what the hell, each? Like, all of these guys are underpaid at the same, like, you could, like, Josh is making less than Dak.
Yep.
And he signed after Dak.
Right.
Like, I don't get it.
Something in the water, and the demonstrated ability to do something as a team. And everybody at the end of their career always goes, "Oh, I'm done with the money bid. I want a ring. I want a ring. I want a ring." Anybody that's going to Buffalo or re-upping with Buffalo knows wherever they go, short of maybe Kansas City, they're not going to get a better quarterback situation, nor are they going to get more bites at the apple to go win that ring. They realize that Josh in his prime is extremely special, and if they can be there, they will probably find team success. They have, again, every year for the past 6 years, they've won more than 10 games. They've gone to the playoffs every single year. Think about that. I mean, you as a Texans fan, even, you've been to the playoffs a couple of times. Me as a Bears fan, I'm looking at the last 6 years. If you told me, hey, minimum double-digit wins, and you'll go to the playoffs every single year, I'd be like, what planet are you from? Sure. Why not? That's what Bills fans have right now, and that's what Bills players know about. The offensive linemen want to support Josh. The defense wants to be there to make sure they give him the ball back with a lead. Everybody's playing for this goal because they believe in what they're doing in Buffalo, and year after year, it's proven true. They've had success as a team, and guys are obviously willing to take a little bit less to stay there and be part of it.
Also, it speaks to the value of signing guys early, right? Because Benford, I think, was extended after 3 years. Bernard, I think, was extended after 3 years. He's only 26. Benford's 25. So again, these are like their first big money extensions, and they're doing them early. Rousseau was done early at one point. Again, Allen is only 29. He's on his third contract already. So Shakir is also 25. This is his first big money extension. So they're doing it as early as humanly possible because they know that the cap is going to go up 8 to 10% every single year. And even if they have to redo the deal in 2-3 years, like, that's fine. The players are getting cash flow now, and they always have the ability to redo it later because Josh Allen's deal is fairly maneuverable, in my opinion, at least compared to Dak. Like, it's fairly maneuverable. You look at what Cincy did, waiting forever. You look at what Dallas has done, waiting forever. And, if the goal for Dallas this is just kind of a preview of us talking about it, I guess, next week. But if the goal for Dallas is to stay in the news cycle and therefore grow the value of the franchise by constantly being the story, and Jerry's going to make back his money and valuation anyway, so he doesn't really care about the cash, like, that's one thing. But if the goal is to, like, be efficient with the salary cap and to save money on the salary cap, like, not even talking about the actual dollars coming out of the owner's pocket, but being efficient with the cap, there is no football reason to have Micah wait 4 to 5 years to get signed, or have Jamar wait 4 to 5 years to get signed, while, Christian Benford's getting it after 3, Terrell Bernard's getting it after 3, Khalil Shakir's getting it after 3. There's no reason to have elite players wait 1 or 2 extra years if your goal is to save on the cap. Like, the Bills, as far as the discounts they've gotten on these guys, you add them all up, it's probably like $30 million in AAV for discounts. That's not nothing. Like, you could go get another elite player for that money because you signed these guys early. So, like, I think the Bills know what they're doing, man. And you look at some of the other franchises around the league that can't get their shit together, like Dallas, and honestly, like Cincy, and, like, this is why. I don't know. It feels like some teams just make it way harder than it needs to be, and Buffalo's not one of them.
No, one of Brandon Beane's absolute greatest strengths, superpowers, whatever you want to call it, as a GM, is his ability to see the talent, realize that they're, young, in a prime, in a window, that they fit with the team, and that he wants them on the team, for the next contract for sure, and sign them early. And you're not kidding when you talk about 25, 30, maybe $35 million AAV that is just available to this team that's not available to other teams through a combination of having players take team-friendly deals and signing them early. It's also that nod to the players. Hey, if you take a little bit less, I will sign you early. You will also get another chance at another deal. You get cash now, and you'll get another deal sooner. at a younger overall age in which you can make more money. So it is a sort of win-win. You trust us, we'll trust you. We'll reward you if you do the right thing for our program. And he's done it over and over again, and it is a major advantage for this team.
So just out of curiosity, because I couldn't remember the exact numbers, I pulled up both Josh Allen's contract and Dak Prescott's contract. And it's not even just about the AAV, like 55 versus 60. It's not even about that. It's more so about the cap percentages. And I want to hammer home how maneuverable Allen's deal is coming off an MVP season compared to Dak Prescott's deal in Dallas. So in 2025 through 2028 for this Dak deal, here's the cap percentages for Dak, i.e. the percentage of the cap that he is taking up with his cap hit. It's 18% this year, 24.1% next year, which is absurd. Goes down to 20% the year after that, and then it's 21%. So before we get to any restructures or anything like that, after this year, it doesn't dip below 20%, which is crazy high. You compare that to Allen's deal coming off an MVP season. This year, it's at 13%. Next year, it spikes all the way up to 18.3%. Then comes back down to 15.7%, then 16%, and then you get to 2029, and the highest it ever gets is 21%, which by then they're probably going to extend him again because there's only 1 year left in the deal at that point. So again, like he gave them a break. Like he gave them a massive break because it's not about the money and it's not about the numbers. It's about he wants to go win a Super Bowl for Buffalo. So why does he care if he gets $55 million a year versus $60 million? He's going to make this deal as maneuverable as possible. All the other guys on the team clearly bought into that philosophy too. Like everybody is locked and loaded to get a ring. They've got money. They've got talent. Like top to bottom, this organization clearly is all about one thing, and that one thing is winning.
They've dedicated everything they've done to that. And again, the results are there almost. I know, Buffalo. Hang on. You've been on the doorstep more than most teams. And your ability to stay there, again, think back to 2 years ago if you're having any qualms about this approach, because everybody was saying, they're going to have to let go of the old core. They're going to have to let go of all these captains. This is the dreaded rebuild. And we said, 2 years ago in our preview, we were like, I don't know that they're going to drop off. I think they're going to be able to sustain because of some of these things. Yes, young players have to step into the gaps, but we think they're there, and they did, and it became a almost zero time or just in time reload. If you're talking about like manufacturing, it's like we let the old stock go and we filled it up with new stock at the same time with no gap. And guess what? We didn't drop off. We still won the division. We still won more than 10 games. That's a very rare thing in the NFL, to get to a peak, to really build your window, to get right to the cusp of the Super Bowl and then not have to tear something down at least for a year. And Brandon Beane's found a formula to do it.
So when looking at third-party additions and where they spent their savings that they got from re-signing all their own guys, first up we got Elijah Moore at $2.5 million, fighting for like wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6 on this roster. Still a very talented player. Never really turned into what we hoped he would be coming out of college, but I mean, I got to think if there's a place that he's gonna work, it's gonna be in Buffalo, especially because a lot of their quick game stuff fits his skill set, which is as a quick separator, somebody who can get you yards after catch. Like if he's going to work anywhere, it's this offense, right? Joey Bosa at $12.6 million. He's still only 30. Like it feels like he's been in the league for a long time, and he has, but like he's not even like an old man. Like 30 is still theoretically at like the tail of a prime for an edge rusher. Like he's still the same age as guys like TJ Watt, Trey Hendrickson. Hell, he's younger than those guys even, I think. So I still think you can get some blood from that stone. $12.6 million. Pretty reasonable contract, assuming he stays healthy. Josh Palmer also brought over to be a starting receiver for them. At least I assume starting receiver for them at $10 million. I also thought that was a really good deal. He's like your classic, like either good number 3 or like solid number 2 whatever role they opt to put him in, he's probably going to play more outside than inside, but whatever role they put him in, like, you're going to get a really, really solid receiver out of it. And then Michael Hoyt they brought in to add to that edge rotation. Again, he's another one of these like big body edges that they love out there in Buffalo. $7 million, very reasonable deal. Shaq Thompson, Panthers legend, brought him over at $1.2 million. I'm not 100% sure if he's going to start because this team isn't really lacking at linebacker. But if you want a veteran presence, somebody who's just been around the block over and over and over again, and he's super cheap, like, I would love to have Shaq Thompson in my room, especially with some of my younger linebackers that I got there. And then Larry Ogunjobi, brought him over from the Steelers to try to improve this ideal rotation. I'm curious to see where he fits in with Ed Oliver because they kind of play the same role. So maybe they're just going to rotate with each other almost exclusively. But, again, 6.6 million, pretty reasonable, I would say, for Larry Ogunjobi. Trey White is also back. Spent a long time with this franchise, wandered off for a little while. Now he's back again. He also could see a significant role this year. I watched that first episode of Hard Knocks and seems healthy, right? And it sure seems like the coaches in the front office think that he can contribute for them significantly this year. So we'll see what Trey brings to the table. And Dane Jackson, also, by the way, speaking of former Bills cornerbacks that are Bills corners, again, Dane Jackson is back in the fold. So
bootleg legend Dane Jackson.
Bootleg legend Dane Jackson, our first interview we ever did together.
The first player we ever interviewed at Senior Bowl 2020. Good to see him back again. Like you said about Trey, wandered off for a year or two, and he's back. And it reminds me a little bit of Patriots coaches. Bills fans, forgive me for bringing up Patriots and Bills episode, but their coaches would wander off, fail, come back. Both Trey White and Dane Jackson were off in the wilderness for a year or two, and hopefully they can rebound to their former form now that they're back in the friendly confines of Buffalo.
See, I don't blame him, though, because I spent like one weekend in Buffalo, and I was like, fuck, I could live here. Like, I was immediately going on Zillow, my flight back home. I was like, so what would it cost? Like,
what could I get here in the market? No, I also like the addition of Derek Forrest, the safety for the Commanders. Not a big dollar signing. Again, young player, only 26. Liked him coming out of college. $1.3 million. Right now, sort of, again, depth charts are extremely early right now, but he's either second or third in the safety rotation. But Taylor Rapp has had trouble staying healthy, trouble with concussions, staying on the field. And if Taylor Rapp gets injured and Derek Forrest is backing him up, we could see him. And he's got very good speed, good size. Gives them some flexibility in that secondary that they desperately need, really.
So moving on from March now, getting to April. Once again, another large class for Buffalo. I want to say it was, 9 total picks? At least 8 total picks. So pretty big rookie group. Is it my favorite draft class? No. But at the same time, their roster's so good that it's not like there's a whole lot of open spots to compete for anyway. So they're really more drafting for depth and special teams regardless.
Yeah, this was a top-heavy draft for me, or first half draft for me. And then I liked some of the dart throws they took later on. We'll talk about them. But round 1, number 30 overall, they opened it with Maxwell Harrison, the cornerback from Kentucky, who's a little bit undersized, incredibly physical, incredibly active, plays a lot of man, but plays with speed and impact, right? When he's on the field, you know where he is because he is playing 100 miles an hour, super high energy, and I can see where he fits in their rotation. They want him to be a starter. They have him penciled in there, but he's been dealing with injuries in camp, so I'm not sure he will end up on the week 1 depth chart as an outside starter for Buffalo.
Okay. We already did the Chargers episode, so we're not going to get a chance to talk about this until the season starts. I'll get to Harrison in a second. First things first. Fuck. Rashawn Slater, breaking news. Ruptured patella tendon. Shit. That's terrible for my agenda. Also terrible for Rashawn Slater, obviously. And I will say this, I am so happy he got paid last week. I am so happy. And this is why players hold in or hold out in some cases. Like, this is why they do it. Because they are one injury away from from a career altering trajectory, right? Like
a 1 week difference in that injury would have been tens of millions of dollars different for Rashawn Slater. And yes, sometimes we see organizations step up and quote unquote take care of their athletes and pay them similarly, but they never pay them the same because that's just not the way the business works. And if he had signed that deal literally 1 week later, it would have been tens of millions of dollars different.
And this is also why it's valuable that Beane signs his guys early, right? Like get the cash flow moving, right? Because players are going to be way more committed to the franchise if you're taking care of them. They will take care of you. So, oh God, I'm gutted for Rashawn.
Yeah, it probably means Joe Alt to left for the season, and then Chargers looking for depth at right tackle because I don't really think they want Pipkins back there.
Maybe Jamari. I don't know.
We'll see if it's Jamari. We'll see. I would be very surprised not to see them get into the market on cut downs and try and either trade for a veteran or see if there's a good young tackle that they like that is on a practice squad that they could elevate because now they have a spot. He would be their presumably third swing tackle. I doubt there's anybody of starting caliber that they're going to be picking off practice squads, but it is a huge shift to go from one of, if not the best young tackle tandem in the league to 50% of that not being available to you for the rest of the year.
Well, the Bills did take one in the 6th round who we'll get to, Chase Lunt, who, if I was the Chargers, I'd been making a call. It was like, hey, you already got 2 monsters on either side. Can we have your third one? that would be, we'll give you a pick, whatever you want. Back to Hairston, though. Obviously a really fast player. At times, not even at times, all the time, I kind of felt like he was a little bit over-reliant on that makeup speed to make the play for him. And I don't think it's going to work as well in the NFL because everybody's really fast in the NFL. But more so, receivers at the NFL level, if you take the wrong step, like he often did at Kentucky, like it felt like he just kind of bid on everything because he trusted that he could just get back in position. And we've seen other corners at the college level that run 4.2, 4.3 that can get away with doing that at the college level. But NFL receivers will eat you alive if you take the bait over and over and over again. Even if they run 4.5, they're going to eat you alive, right? And I worry that he was so reliant on makeup speed that it compromised his development as a technician because he never really had to learn great techniques. So, hopefully, when he comes back healthy from that sprained LCL in a few weeks, he'll continue to learn from Trey White, who's always been a great technician. Because if you can get like Trey White's technique, but in Maxwell Hairston's physical profile, you have a ridiculously good corner. He's just not there yet. So we'll see.
Yeah, the eyes and the discipline weren't necessarily there. All of the physical skills are. And again, landing in Buffalo gives me hope for his development because, again, your head coach is a proven developer of defensive backs along with the position coaches you've got there. So round number 2, pick number 41, a pick they got from the Bears. TJ Sanders, you already talked about him. The defensive tackle from South Carolina was on that very talented South Carolina line and a very powerful player. I would say more of a linear player. He does not have a lot of bend or twist. He is about pushing you off your spot. He's pretty good at it. He's going to have to get his hand usage up. He has some good hand fighting moves right now. He's going to need more because if he's not going to be able to bend and twist around you, he's going to need to be able to get your hands off of him. And again, very talented player, physically large, powerful, good speed in a straight line. He's going to have to develop some of that interior technique to go against the best technicians on the planet, which is interior offensive linemen in the NFL.
He is a very linear DT, like see ball, get ball. Like that is TJ Sanders. And he's very good at it. Like, don't get me wrong, very good at it. But I do want to see, like some wiggle, right? Like I would love to see like some kind of counter that he can develop if the speed to power doesn't end up working. Because there's a lot of guards in the NFL that are 335, 340, 345. Like if he's going up against Trey Smith, who can just anchor against almost every single human alive, like I would love to see if he had something else. And maybe he'll develop it. But for now, again, it's one of these like, he can play one note, but he's really good at playing that one note. I would love to see him add one more.
Well, the good news is he's got some of those practice mates on his own team. He can go against Osiris Torrance and try and work something.
Good luck moving Osiris Torrance. Good God.
Yeah, that's a practice battle that'll be a lot of fun to see. Round 3, number 72, a pick they got from the Bears as well. Landon Jackson, the defensive end or edge from Arkansas, depending on how you classify him. Another tall, long, wildly explosive athlete. There were a lot of people that like Landon Jackson better than I did. He is of a type. He is of the George Karlaftis, Lucas Van Ness school of defensive ends, and he has untapped potential, that's for sure. Didn't always finish, is crazy good in a straight line, but is just long and explosive. If you like that type of edges, Landon Jackson was going to be your guy. I did not think he would be available in the 3rd round, to the Bills' credit. I thought people would gamble on his physical traits by the time we got out of the 2nd. He's still there in the 3rd. He becomes a Bill and, again, gets added to a pass rush that already has some of those guys. So it's interesting to me to see where he will land in that rotation, but not a player I think that's hit his ceiling yet.
He's very Billsy. Right?
He is very Billsy.
If you ask me to describe the ideal Bills edge, it's honestly like the ideal Dennis Allen edge, but like actually good at football. Where it's like big, powerful, long, sets a hard edge. Like it's no accident why the Bills edges got, twice as many TFLs as their IDL last year. Like they have a type at edge that they love. It's hell, like Jadeveon Clowney. Like Jadeveon Clowney was built in a lab to be a Bills edge. And Landon Jackson, I'm not saying he's Jadeveon Clowney, but Landon Jackson is that kind of edge, right? He's like 265, 270 plus, can play anything from a 4-eye to a wide 9, which he did at Arkansas. You want him to stand up, he can do that. And his job is to just like grab a hold of the tight end while they're fighting for their life and put them into the dirt and then tackle the running back. Are you going to get a whole lot out of him as a pass rusher? Probably not, because he is super stiff. Like he does not have loose hips whatsoever. But if you need a pocket compressor, if you need a guy who plays hard, he's got great effort. He's just a Bills edge. Like he's another Greg Rousseau. Although Greg Rousseau turned into being a really good pass rusher, but like Greg Rousseau coming out of Miami was the exact same kind of guy to me.
Yeah, then we get to day 3, round 4, pick 109. Again, another pick that was originally belonging to the Bears. And I got to say, this is my favorite pick in the Bills draft, top to bottom, because it is the highest leverage lottery pick that they took. They go for Deone Walker, the defensive tackle from Kentucky, who played hurt last year. He had a lower back injury. And the year before, if you look at the physical skills, the size, the movement ability, the quickness, the explosion, Deone Walker is rare. If you get back to like Bill Parcells' Planet Theory, people this large are not supposed to move in this way. And if Deone Walker is healthy, he will be an absolute contributor for the Bills DT rotation. If he's not healthy, which is why he was available in the 4th round, we'll still see a solid player, but we will not see the spectacular one that we saw 2 years ago at Kentucky when he was healthy.
This is a pure upside pick, right? And the upside is massive. Like it really is. I still remember, watching him when he was like 18. Like throwing SEC offensive linemen around, and hopefully he gets back to doing that because they need him to. Like we've spent a long time talking about the DT rotation on this team and how like nobody's job is safe, not even the ones that they've paid. Like they need him to be that guy, and hopefully he will be. Was he that guy on tape last year? Absolutely not. Wasn't even close. But that's also why he went in the 4th round and not the 1st. But he went in the 4th round because, even though he had 7th round tape last year, he still kind of split the difference and went in the 4th because there's like a little piece of you that thinks just maybe just maybe he can get back to that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I always worry about big guys with back injuries, but if he comes back, and boy, I hope he does, because he is a mountain that moves in an instant. Now we get into the 2 round 5s, the 2 round 6s, and round 7. The first of the round 5 picks, number 170, a pick they got from the Cowboys. Jordan Hancock, the cornerback out of Ohio State, who they currently have slotted at safety, if I'm not mistaken. So possibly a position change coming for him there, but comes from a very talented room at Ohio State. He didn't do anything on tape that impressed me, but at the same time, he didn't do anything that really depressed me either. And with Ohio State's schedule, that is saying something. Second round 5 pick, number 173, only 3 picks later, a compensatory pick. They get Jackson Hawes, the tight end out of Georgia Tech. I will say this about Jackson Hawes. The Bills already have their pass-catching tight ends, so Jackson Hawes is there to be a blocker and a special teamer. Round 6, pick number 177. Again, they had 170, 173, and 177. So this is the Bills portion of the NFL draft from the Giants. Dorian Strong, the cornerback from Virginia Tech, player I like a lot, really good frame. I'm interested to see how he gets to develop because he's a very good special teamer right now, and I think he is a good man corner because of his length and speed. He's not the most agile, but he leverages his gifts in a way. He knows how to win based on who he is physically as a player. So certainly not the most stout corner. He is tall, skinny, and long, but he knows how to leverage those gifts and did so at Virginia Tech in a way that caught my eye. Plus the special teams value, that's what you want in the 6th round.
Not to mention, like this team has a history of just developing corners no matter when they were drafted or even if they were drafted at all. Like I throw out draft capital when talking about Bills corners because whether it's Benford, whether it's Dane, I mean, bringing in Rasul as a free agent and he played well for him. Like they get really good corner play out of nothing as far as investments made. So I trust this staff.
Yeah, I love it even more for Dorian because of that. So round 6, number 206. This is Chase Lunt, the tackle out of UConn that you talked about when we, I don't want to say broke the Rashawn Slater news because by the time this comes out, it'll be a couple of weeks old. But talk about Chase Lunt because he is also a mountain of a dude.
The fit with Lunt I found really interesting because, this was not a super outside zone heavy team, which is largely because they just have very large humans on the offensive line, which tend to not be as good in outside zone. They only ran it about 32.5% of the time, which sounds like a lot, but like relative to the rest of the NFL, not a whole lot. And their calling card was really more like getting downhill with either inside zone or man blocking or power or counter, like anything that allows Osiris Torrance to just immediately get hands on and dump you into the dirt. That's really the kind of runs that they like. Whereas Lunt, like UConn was like just outside zone all day, every day. Like they're like the Falcons of college football, right? And he was exceptional at it. Him and Charles Grant were probably the 2 best tackles in the NFL, or not in the NFL, in this draft in terms of like just breathtaking cutoffs on outside zone or like reaching edges all by themselves. Like that's really what he's been good at. So it's an interesting kind of fit. Obviously, he's not going to start on this team because they already have 2 great tackles. But if the situation calls for it where he has to come in, or maybe if they bring him in as like a 3rd tackle and they want to run some 6 offensive line looks because the Bills have done that a lot. In fact, they might have done that more than anybody else in the NFL last year off the top of my head because I feel like I saw it all the time with them. The fact that he is so good in outside zone, it kind of puts it on the table for them to do that from a 6 offensive line look. So keep an eye out for that. Even though he's a 6-round tackle, like if he's going to get snaps as a 3rd tackle anywhere in the NFL that doesn't require injury, it's probably going to be here.
Yeah, the Bills finish up the draft, round 7, pick number 240, originally a Vikings pick with Caden Prather, the wide receiver out of Maryland. This is, make no mistake, a height, weight, speed pick. Caden Prather is 6'4", over 200 pounds. He ran a 4.48. You can work with that, folks. Is he going to be a practice squatter this year? Probably. This is your deep threat down the sideline and wasn't super productive in college. This is the dice toss to say, hey, you're big, tall, you're fast. Come on in. We'll see if we can work with you.
That brings us to UDFAs. And I'll be honest, EJ, I didn't watch any of them. Like, we'll throw the list on screen so you guys can see it. This is one of the only teams where it's like, oh, I got nothing. Not saying they're bad players. I didn't get a chance to watch any of these guys. Did you?
No, I reached out to Bill's sources because I said, hey, can you confirm that all these guys are still there? And a couple of them had already moved on. So I appreciated that because we're late in the season now or late in training camp. And again, we put together the original UDFA list way back a couple of months ago. There's been some movement. So I always reach out to sources to say, hey, is this list still accurate? But hey, has anybody done anything in camp? And all I got back was Gosnell caught a TD from Allen versus Trey White. I was like,
all right,
okay, cool. So I don't think we're far off in saying, it doesn't overwhelm us as a UDFA class in terms of value or perceived value. Guys that should have been drafted had draftable grades. But the other thing about the Bills is they do this every year. This has been Bean's approach forever. This is not new this year. Grabbing guys from smaller schools with smaller names that don't have a lot of buzz around them, and a couple of them always end up making the team. They just see a particular trait or characteristic, way they play, some particular role or ability that they have, and they leverage it. And usually they end up on the practice squad. This isn't a team where UDFAs come on and play big, strong roles early on in their careers, but at the same time, it creates a very affordable depth package throughout your roster. And they do it every year. And I think every year we say this about their UDFA class. Like, I don't know, they got a guy, maybe half a guy that we thought was pretty interesting. And the rest, A, we've never heard of, B, we haven't watched. A couple of them always stick.
So that brings us to our final segment of the show, which is our 3 core questions, right? What was the identity before? What do they want their identity to be now? And what is the goal for this season? Their identity before and what they want their identity to be now are basically the same thing, right? Which is a hyper efficient, complete football team. Defense helps the offense. Offense helps the defense. The goal is we get 10 possessions, you get 10 possessions. We're going to score on 5 of them. We just need to make sure you only score on 4, right? This is a team that when they get in the red zone, they score. When they get on third down, they convert it. And it's largely because they have a very effective run game. They have an effective screen game. They will RPO you to death. They have a quarterback that if you give him a man coverage call on 3rd and 5, he's just going to run for it anyway. And you can't get him off the field. They're super frustrating to defend because you can't get them off the field. They're not going to beat you over the top, but you're also not going to beat them over the top. Like, they had the lowest explosive pass rate attempted in the entire league. And they just boil the game of football down into plays that get between 4 and 6 yards at a time. And they think they can do that at just a slightly higher clip than you. And so eventually we get to the 4th quarter. There's 4 minutes left. Josh Allen has the ball. It's a tie game. And it's over, right? It's over because they're more efficient than you. And like when we really get down to those razor thin margins, they're going to out execute you and be on the winning side of those razor thin margins over and over and over again. And they're literally just like Kansas City in that way. You could argue they're an even better version of it than Kansas City is. Like all the metrics that Kansas City was good in last year, Buffalo was better in the vast majority of them. They just happened to like not play their best game in the playoffs against them, but like they're built the same, right? So what is the goal for this season? Beat Kansas City. Because if you beat Kansas City, I really don't think there's anything else that can stop them at this point. Like, that's like the one team that I think that is standing in the way. And that's no disrespect to anybody in the NFC, but like that's kind of it. Like, if they get past that team, the rest is on the table.
If they can be the same version of themselves with a better pass defense and some contributions along the defensive line from both free agency and the rookies, but basically keep everything else the same. Yes, we'd like to see a little bit better safety play, but that's just that's the finest slice of the garlic with a razor blade you can come up with. Defensive line has to play a little bit better. That'll bring up the pass game defense efficiency. If the offense is anywhere near where it was for the last 2 years under Joe Brady, they'll be right back there again with a better chance to, again, face the demons, get over the hump, get into the Super Bowl, and see if they can win one.
And those demons, by the way, for putting a name to them, are Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, and Travis Kelce. Like, that's the demons. That's the list. You know? And I hate to reduce it to this because it feels like Bills fans, like, every single year have to deal with the Kansas City discussion. But that's it. Like, that's literally it. That's all we have left to dissect, right? It's a damn good football team. It's one of the best football teams in the NFL. They just have to beat the other best team in the NFL, and they're home free. Well, I shouldn't say home free. Like, obviously, you still have to win the Super Bowl, but like once they get over that hump, I don't think the Super Bowl is going to feel that insurmountable to them. Like, that's it. So, all right, Bills fans. Hope you guys enjoyed today's show. I know that we probably mentioned the Chiefs too much for your liking, but you kind of can't talk about this team without doing it. So hope you guys come back for the Patreon episode tomorrow, where we pick our AFC East Division winner and we pick our award winners for the division: MVP, Rookies of the Year, Coach of the Year. We do our bold predictions. That in addition to our companion infographic that has all the data we talked about today. There's 18 pages of it. You can find that on the Patreon as well, at the link in the description below, or the QR code on the screen. Find that any way you want to. And then we got one more division next week, so make sure you come back again, because we're hitting the Giants on Monday, and then we got the Cowboys on Tuesday, the Commies on Wednesday, the Eagles on Thursday, and then we're basically at the season. So, all right, thanks for watching. I know this is a long one, but we appreciate it, and we'll see you very soon.